Hello everyone, welcome to 13 Nights of Fright here on my channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Racquel. Those of you who are returning, thank you so much for coming back. From now until Halloween, I am going to be uploading little spooky story shorts here on my channel. If you would like to be notified of a future upload, please make sure you are subscribed and your notification bell is on. Well, today's spooky story. We've all had that, we've all gone out to like thrift stores, I'm sure, or garage sales or estate sales, or maybe we found an object in the woods, we thought it was pretty cool and we brought it home. But the thing with that is that these objects people have owned before. And these objects might have had a story with that owner. That owner might have been attached to that one particular object. So, if you want to hear today's story, make sure you grab a blanket, grab your drink of choice, light a candle, maybe light some sage, and let's get into today's spooky story. This was a story that I heard a long time ago, and I kind of want to share it with you. And it's one of the creepy things that I heard at a sleepover. So let me see if I can remember it right. The story starts when Ryan was 2. His father was in a fatal motorcycle accident, and his mother had been against motorcycles ever since. But not Ryan. Ryan was a greaser. He worked on cars. He loved motorcycles to death. He really wanted a motorcycle, but his mother would not co-sign for a motorcycle for him when he was of the age of 16. So he decided that, he'd save up or whatever, and he'd have to give in and get a car instead. That was until the summer of his 16th year in 1992 when him and his friend Bobby were on their way to their local swimming hole. As they were hiking through the woods to their local swimming hole, Ryan noticed a shiny thing out of the corner of his eye, and he turned and he looked through the foliage and he could see the outline of a bike. It was a Ducati, and I had to look it up because, it was a Ducati CB450. I had to look it up because I couldn't remember exactly what it was. But it was a Ducati a Honda CB450. I had to do some research on that and ask a couple of friends that knew the story, what it was. So it was a Honda CB450. Oh yeah, Racquel, you're really off to a good start right now. Anyways, so he saw this bike, and the vines were like up through the tires. Both tires were flat. It was missing a gas tank, a headlight, and an oil pump. And him being the mechanic that he is, he knew that he knew how he could fix it. He knew that he could go to scrap yards and get used parts and put them on the bike. So, and he knew it would be pretty cheap to fix up. He would have to do a little bit of scrubbing to the body, but otherwise it was in pretty good shape. So he had his friend Bobby help him pull this thing out of the foliage, and Bobby offered to keep it in his pole barn because Ryan's mother did not want Ryan to have a bike. So Bobby offered up his pole barn. So they spent the rest of the day taking the bike to the pole barn instead of swimming at the swimming hole, which was their original plan. And over the next couple of weeks, Ryan went to Bobby's pole barn every day and did a little work on the bike. One day, in particular, when he was there, Bobby came out to the barn, and the look on Bobby's face was one of sheer terror. He wouldn't even enter the barn. And Ryan thought this was weird, and he's like, "Come here, I need you to hold this for me." And Bobby just said, "I need you to get that bike out of this barn." And Ryan was like, why? And he's like, because ever since that bike has been in this barn, there has been weird crap going on in this barn. The light has been going on and off. There has been motorcycle sounds, and I swear to God, I even saw the bike leave the barn, but only to find the bike there the next day. He's like, that bike is haunted. You need to get it out of my barn. Ryan thought this was hilarious because Ryan, being the skeptic that he was like, come on, man, my mom's not going to let me keep this thing. And Bobby's like, well, why don't you put it in your shed? She never goes out to that back shed anyway. Which was the truth. It just there wasn't much room for Ryan to work on the motorcycle in the shed. But he had to do what he had to do. His friend was not going to let him keep it in the pole barn anymore. So Ryan took the motorcycle out to the shed. And by this time, he only had a couple more things to do with the body, and then it would be ready to go. So 2 nights after he had acquired the motorcycle in his shed, he was awoken at 3 o'clock in the morning by the sounds of a motorcycle running. He shot up to his window and looked outside, and he could see headlights of a motorcycle coming towards his window. He thought that this was nuts, that this was crazy. Why would somebody veer their motorcycle off of the road and come at his window? He actually jumped up and ran outside thinking that it was a motorcycle that was about to crash into his window. When all of a sudden, when he ran outside, there was no headlights, there was no motorcycle, there was no bike, nothing to be seen. This spooked him a little bit, as it would spook anybody, but he just chalked it up to maybe him having a nightmare. The next night, he was almost done with it. He just had to put on a couple of coats of paint, and then he'd be ready to ride. And he did, but being that the paint had to dry, he had to forfeit another night and wait another night to ride this bike. He came in from the shed, and his mother made him sit down at the table, and she said, you need to get rid of that bike. And he's like, what bike? And she's like, don't play dumb with me. I know you have a bike out in that shed. I hear it every night. I don't know what you're doing out there with it, but it wakes me up every night at 3 o'clock in the morning. And by the way, you should be sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he was shocked, and he's like, I've never had it on at 3 o'clock in the morning. I've never ridden it to begin with. And she's like, don't play dumb with me. I see you tearing it up around the backyard at night, every night. So now Ryan's kind of spooked. He's thinking maybe somebody's sneaking into his barn at 3 o'clock at night, riding the bike around, bringing the bike out, or breaking the bike out of the shed and riding the bike around his backyard. This is what he's thinking. Maybe it's Bobby pulling a prank. So he calls Bobby, and Bobby's like, no, man, I haven't touched that thing. I wouldn't go near that thing. That thing is creepy. It runs on its own, is what Bobby said. And there was actual fear in his voice, enough so that Ryan believed him. So now Ryan was starting to kind of wonder about the bike himself. The next night, it was ready. It was all ready and good to go. He could take the bike now, but his mom would be watching, so he would have to sneak out and take that bike. He actually told his mom, instead of sneaking out, he told his mom he was going to sell it to somebody. He was just riding it just to go sell it to somebody. And she agreed. She said, okay, but you have to call me when you get there. You have to tell me, who's buying this and give me all the details. Well, Ryan gave his mom all the details to one of their other friends, who decided that he'd be a part of the lie so that Ryan could ride the bike for his first time out. He pulls the bike out. He goes on a ride. Everything's all good. Then all of a sudden, his brakes fail, and he is coming around a curve, and he can't get a good handle on it. He flies into the woods and ends up, guess where? At the spot that he originally found the bike. He flew off this bike And luckily, he did not hit a tree. He had a helmet on. He was fine. He got up and he was like, oh my God, you know, and when he noticed where he was at, he did get a chill. He felt kind of spooked. He was like, why are we here? This is kind of odd that we're at the same spot where I found this bike in the first place. Not thinking too much of it, and seeing that the gas tank was punctured now, and there was no way for him to get the bike up onto the road, and there was no way that he would be able to drive the bike home, he decided to leave it there for the night and make the long trek home, and that he would get it in the morning. So morning time comes, and he goes out to his shed to grab some chains and some shit so he can grab the bike pull the bike out from where it was. And as he opens up the door, there is the bike sitting in his shed. His jaw drops. A chill goes through his whole body. How did the bike get back in his shed? He had crashed it. He swears that he had crashed it. He even looked at himself. He had the marks from hitting the trees on his face and on his arms. So he's like, that's it. I need to find somebody to take this bike off my hands. I can't have this bike anymore. So he does call around to a couple of people to see if anybody wants to buy a bike that just needs a new gas tank. He puts an ad in the paper. For it because he's not getting any takers. The next night, he's awoken at 3 o'clock in the morning again to the sound of the bike running, to the headlights coming at him at his window. This time he runs out there and he sees the bike headed straight for his backwoods. And it's going down a trail that leads to the swimming hole. The bike drove itself right back to the spot where it was, where he had originally found it. He was not about to stick around there, and he ran home again. And same thing, next morning the bike was in his shed. And this happened almost every other night for about 2 weeks before finally he had had enough. And during the daytime, him and Bobby took the bike and they took it right back to the spot where they had found it. And they said, we give up. You can have the bike back. Sorry, we stole it. And that is the end of the story. From what I've heard, the bike never came back to him. There are other stories that say that the bike did come back to him and he did fix it up and he did end up riding it again, and then he crashed and killed himself. There's all different types of alternative endings to the story, but I think that's a creepy one. Let me know what you thought of this story in the comment section below. Do you have any stories about maybe haunted objects or an object that you picked up from somewhere that kind of gives off a bad vibe or does some strange, weird stuff? I know dolls have a tendency to do that. So just let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and please be kind to yourselves and to each other, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!